Hi, my friend. Welcome back. I am so glad you are here. Take a slow breath with me and let the world outside grow quiet for a moment. Now, imagine you are standing in a forest, not just any forest, a bamboo forest in Japan. The trees are tall, so tall they almost touch the sky. The light that falls through the leaves is soft and green, like something from a dream. The air is cool, and everything around you is still, perfectly still. Somewhere in this silence, a story is waiting, a story that is more than 2,000 years old. How did a small island smaller than the state of California become one of the most powerful, most creative, and most respected countries in the world? Today, we are going to walk together through the entire story of Japan. We will discover how ancient spirits shaped a civilization. We will meet warriors who lived by a code of honor so powerful it still inspires people today. And we will see how a country that was completely destroyed found the strength to rise again. So make yourself comfortable. Take my hand, and let us step back in time. More than 2,000 years ago, Japan was not one country. It was hundreds of small villages, scattered across 4 main islands. The islands were covered in mountains and thick forests. Rivers cut through valleys. The sea surrounded everything. The people lived simply. They fished in cold rivers. They grew rice in wet, muddy fields. They made tools from wood and stone. Life was hard, but it was also deeply connected to nature. The Japanese people believed that spirits lived in everything around them, in the mountains, in the rivers, in the trees, even in the wind. These spirits were called kami. Kami is a Japanese word that means something like sacred spirit or god of nature. Every rock, every waterfall, every old tree could hold a kami inside it. People did not just use nature. They thanked it, they prayed to it, they bowed to it. This belief became the foundation of a religion called Shinto. And even today, more than 2,000 years later, Shinto is still alive in Japan. You can still see small wooden shrines standing quietly beside rivers and under ancient trees. But this peaceful world of villages and spirits would not stay peaceful for long. Now here is where the story gets interesting, and I want you to stay close, because what happens next sets the stage for everything that follows. As the villages grew, some leaders became more powerful than others. Families joined together to form clans. A clan is a large group of families who share the same name, the same land, and the same loyalty. Each clan had a chief, and these chiefs wanted one thing above all else: power. They fought each other. They formed alliances and then broke them. Villages were burned. People were forced to choose sides. It was a time of struggle and survival. But one clan rose above all the others, and they had a secret weapon. Not a sword, not an army, but a story. This clan claimed they were descended from Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun. Amaterasu was the most important kami in all of Japan. She was the one who brought light to the world. And this one clan said, "We are her children. We are chosen to lead." Did everyone believe this story? Perhaps not at first, but over time, as this clan grew stronger and won more battles, more and more people accepted it. And from this one powerful clan, the first emperor of Japan was born. Now, you might think the emperor controlled everything, but here is the surprise, and this is the key to understanding all of Japanese history. The emperor was respected. He was honored. He was worshipped, almost like a god. But he did not truly rule. Behind the emperor, the clans still held the real power. The emperor was like the sun. Everyone could see him, but no one could touch him. And the people who actually made the decisions stayed in the shadows. Remember this pattern, because it will repeat again and again throughout Japan's story. Around the 6th and 7th centuries, something new began to arrive in Japan. Not armies, not weapons, something far more powerful. Ideas. Japanese leaders looked across the sea to China, one of the most advanced civilizations in the world at that time. China had a written language. China had organized laws. China had philosophy, art, and a religion called Buddhism. Buddhism is a path of peace and inner wisdom. It teaches that suffering is part of life, but through patience and understanding, a person can find peace. Japanese monks traveled to China to study. When they returned, they brought Buddhism with them, along with Chinese writing, Chinese art, and Chinese ideas about government. Japan did not simply copy China. It took what it learned and made it Japanese. The writing system was adapted. The temples were redesigned. The ideas were woven into Japan's own culture, like threads into cloth. And with these new tools, Japan began to build something remarkable. The emperor built a new capital city, first at Nara, and then at a place that would become one of the most beautiful cities in the world. Its name was Kyoto. And I want you to picture Kyoto in your mind right now. Because what happened in this city is extraordinary. Kyoto became the heart of Japanese culture. Poets wrote short, delicate poems called haiku, just 3 lines, but filled with feeling. Artists painted mountains and rivers with ink on silk. Musicians played soft, haunting melodies on wooden flutes. Monks built temples so peaceful that even today, people travel from all over the world just to sit inside them and be still. In the imperial court, there was a woman named Murasaki Shikabu. Around the year 1000, she wrote a long, beautiful story called The Tale of Genji. Many scholars believe it is the world's first novel. A novel is a long work of fiction, a story created from imagination. And the world's very first one was written in Japan by a woman more than 1,000 years ago. Think about that. While much of the world was still living in darkness and war, Japan was creating art, poetry, and literature that would last forever. But this golden age had a shadow. The emperor grew weaker, the clans grew stronger, and a new kind of leader was rising, one who carried a sword. If you enjoy calm, meaningful stories like this one, I invite you to subscribe. A new journey arrives every week. The samurai. Even the word sounds powerful. The samurai were warriors skilled, disciplined, and deeply loyal. They served the powerful clans and protected the land. They trained for years in sword fighting, archery, and horseback riding. But the samurai were not only fighters. They also studied poetry. They practiced calligraphy, the art of beautiful writing. They sat in silence during tea ceremonies, and they followed a strict code of honor called Bushido. Bushido means the way of the warrior. It taught the samurai to be brave, honest, loyal, and respectful even to their enemies. A true samurai would rather die with honor than live with shame. The strongest samurai became rulers called shoguns. A shogun is a military leader, the real power behind the emperor. The emperor stayed in his palace in Kyoto, performing ceremonies and writing poetry. But the shogun made the real decisions. He controlled the army. He controlled the land. He controlled Japan. For hundreds of years, the samurai ruled. Society was organized into strict levels. The samurai were at the top. Below them were farmers, then craftsmen, and at the bottom, merchants. Everyone knew their place. Life was stable, but also very controlled. And then, the shoguns made a decision that would change Japan's path for more than 200 years. In the early 1600s, Japan's rulers made a dramatic choice. They closed the country, completely. No foreigners were allowed to enter. No Japanese person was allowed to leave. Ships that tried to arrive were turned away or destroyed. Foreign books were banned. Christianity, which missionaries had brought from Europe, was forbidden. This policy was called sakoku. Sakoku means closed country. And for more than 200 years, Japan lived in almost total isolation. Isolation means being completely alone, separate from the rest of the world. Inside this closed world, life was peaceful. Art continued to grow. Woodblock prints, beautiful pictures carved into wood and pressed onto paper, became famous. Cities grew. Theaters performed dramatic plays, called kabuki. The tea ceremony became an art form. But outside Japan, the world was changing fast. Europe was building empires. America was growing. New machines were being invented, and Japan knew nothing about any of it. Until one summer morning, when everything changed. The year is 1853. It is a warm July morning in Edo Bay, near what we now call Tokyo. Fishermen are working on the water. The sky is clear. Everything is calm. And then, they see something on the horizon. Dark shapes, moving slowly toward them. 4 ships enormous, black, and covered in metal. Smoke pours from their chimneys. They are powered not by wind, but by steam engines, and on their sides, cannons. These are American ships, commanded by Commodore Matthew Perry. He carries a letter from the President of the United States. The message is simple: open your doors, or face consequences. Japan is terrified. They have no modern weapons. They have no steamships. They have been alone for 200 years. And now, the outside world is standing at their door. After months of debate, Japan agrees to open. Treaties are signed. Foreign traders begin to arrive. And inside Japan, the reaction is explosive. Some leaders want to fight to push the foreigners out and protect tradition. Others believe Japan must change quickly or be conquered, like China and India had been. The country is torn apart. And out of this crisis, a revolution is born. In 1868, the shogun is overthrown. The young Emperor Meiji takes power, real power, for the first time in centuries. He is only 15 years old, but his advisors have a bold vision. Japan must transform itself, not in 100 years, not in 50, now. And what happens next is one of the most extraordinary transformations in all of human history. Japan sends its brightest young people to Europe and America. They study everything: science, medicine, engineering, law, military strategy. When they return, they rebuild Japan from the ground up. Railroads are laid across the country. Factories rise in the cities. A modern army is trained. A modern navy is built. Schools are opened for every child, boys and girls alike. In just 30 years, Japan goes from a feudal country of samurai and swords to a modern industrial power. Feudal means an old system where lords and warriors control the land. Japan leaps across centuries in a single generation. The world is shocked. No one expected this. A small island nation, closed for 200 years, suddenly stands equal to the great powers of Europe. But the samurai, the warriors who had ruled for centuries, lose everything. They are no longer allowed to carry swords. Their titles are taken away. Their world disappears. Some accept the change. Some fight back. And some simply sit in silence, watching a world they no longer recognize. Japan's rise is miraculous, but it carries a dangerous seed inside it, the desire for power. As Japan grew stronger, it began to look outward. It wanted respect. It wanted resources. It wanted an empire just like the Western nations it had learned from. Japan took control of Korea. It invaded parts of China, and in 1941, it made a fateful decision. Fateful means a choice that changes everything that comes after. Japan attacked the American naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, and with that single action, Japan entered World War II. At first, Japan expanded quickly across Asia and the Pacific. But the war turned. Battle by battle, Island by island, Japan was pushed back. Cities were bombed. Food became scarce. Millions of people suffered. And then came August, 1945. The United States dropped 2 atomic bombs, first on Hiroshima, then on Nagasaki. An atomic bomb is the most destructive weapon ever created by humans. In Hiroshima alone, an entire city was destroyed in a single flash of light. More than 100,000 people died instantly. Many more would die in the months and years that followed. On August 15th, 1945, the Emperor of Japan spoke on the radio for the first time in history. His voice was quiet and strained. He told the Japanese people that the war was over. Japan had surrendered. The country lay in ruins. Everything seemed lost. But Japan's story was not over. What happened next is perhaps the most beautiful chapter in Japan's long history. The people of Japan did what they had always done. They got up. They kept going, step by step, day by day. Families rebuilt their homes with whatever they could find. Workers cleared rubble from the streets. Factories were repaired and reopened. New companies were born, names that would soon become famous around the world: Sony, Toyota, Honda, Panasonic. Japan did not just rebuild. It reinvented itself. It focused on quality, on precision, on innovation. Innovation means creating new and better ways of doing things. Japanese products became some of the best in the world. Japanese technology led the future. In just a few decades, Japan transformed from a destroyed nation into the second largest economy on Earth. And it did this not with armies or weapons, but with work, patience, and an unbreakable spirit. Today, Japan is a place where 2,000 years of history live side by side. You can walk through an ancient temple in the morning surrounded by silence, by stone, by the smell of incense, and by afternoon, you are standing in the neon glow of Tokyo, one of the most modern cities ever built. Monks in simple robes walk past businessmen in dark suits. Bullet trains race past rice fields that have been planted the same way for 1,000 years. And this is what Japan teaches us: that tradition and change are not enemies, they are partners, that it is possible to honor the past while building the future, that even after the greatest loss, the greatest destruction, the greatest pain, a person, a family, a nation can rise again. Not because the pain disappears, but because the strength to continue never does. And now, this story returns to you. You are learning English, and that is its own kind of journey, long, sometimes quiet, sometimes hard. But every story you listen to, every word you understand, is a small step forward. You are doing something brave. You are building a bridge between your world and a wider one. So keep going, step by step. Like Japan, your story is still being written. If this story stayed with you, I would love to hear from you. What surprised you the most? Was it the samurai, the black ships, or the way Japan rebuilt after the war? Write it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you are not subscribed yet, come join us. Every week, we travel together through history, through language, through life. You are not alone on this journey. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next story.